Welcome to the Women's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Women's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? Welcome to my show. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen. The Women's Connection is a program about women and events shaping their lives. My guest today is a woman who is an international business lady. Her name is Lynn Bicker, and I would like to welcome her. Lynn, welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Barrie.
I'm so glad you're in this country today. Let us hear a little bit more about your background.
Okay. Well, I'm from the UK. You can probably tell that by the accent. I don't quite match your New York accents. My professional background is that I started out as a technologist after I'd been a mature student. I didn't go to college until I was 29, and I didn't even think about career until then, and my kids were quite a good age then.
Well, that's good for you. I'm glad you went back.
Yeah, it was a good thing to do, and I really enjoyed it. It felt like a luxury at that age, rather than when you're 18 and have to do it. And so I went to college as an older person, did a degree in English and computing, and went off to be a technologist, and worked my way through an administrative computing job at a university, and then went to work for Digital Equipment, which is of course an American company based in Boston. Well, I worked for Digital for 6 years, most of which were extremely happy, and gave me a lot of opportunities for travelling, both to the US and in Europe. I had a European responsibility as well. And then in '93 I left Digital and started up my own company with a couple of colleagues. And the company is now 3 years old. It's called the Solutions Organization, and we're doing pretty well. We're growing every year, so it's really good.
Terrific. You've been here, part of a U.S. company. How do you see the differences between the U.S. doing business and European companies doing business?
There is quite a significant difference. One of the things that I always think is kind of strange, really, is that here we are, we both apparently speak English, both in England and in the US, and yet nobody seems to realise that actually we're talking quite different languages.
I agree.
We just don't understand each other in the way that we might do if we thought this was a common language. So I think the expectations that people have of doing business either as a Brit in the US or as an American in the UK or other parts of Europe are in some way influenced by that language understanding or lack of understanding. And I think there really is a different culture. I find over here I need to be much more zappy, actually.
Zappy?
Yeah, I need to be on top of things. I need to be able to say a lot more than I would think about saying back home. I tend to listen to people a lot more back home. But here, your minds work in a different way, and you're on top of things, and you're wanting things to move on.
So we move at a faster clip.
Oh, yes, you do.
So would you say that this is just indicative of dealing with men, or just women, or just across the board?
Oh, I think it's across the board. I think women have other differences than men. But certainly my experience of American business so far is that men and women expect you to move along pretty sharpish, which is great. That really focuses the mind. Now,
do you find this also, okay, this is in the UK, do you find it also in, let's say, France or Spain or something?
They're all different. They're all very different.
In what way are they different?
Well, in Spain, for example, the Spanish have a really tremendous capacity for enjoying life. And a lot of their business is done when you and I might be thinking of going to bed. They'll think nothing of going out for dinner at 10 or 11 at night and having business conversations until 2 or 3 in the morning over the dinner.
And what time do they go to work?
Well, that's the funny thing. They always seem to be up there and ready to go first thing the next morning.
My Lord.
But they do manage the odd siesta, I think.
What other differences have you found between the United States and European business, mostly with women, let's say?
Okay, well, I think women over here have made progress in a different way than we have in Europe. I think your legislative framework obviously makes a difference, although some would argue that that difference shouldn't be forced by a legal framework, that it should be something that comes out of behaviour. However, I have to say I think you have an advantage in all sorts of ways. In the UK, although there are initiatives which are focused on helping women get to the top companies, there is still a dearth of really senior women. Less than 3% of women directors on the big companies in the UK, on the FT 100, for example.
I don't know if it's much more than that here.
I get the impression that it is more, and maybe that's also a function of size. I mean, you have a lot of multinationals here, you have a lot more business to be done simply because of the size of the country.
Would you say that also has to do with the fact that there are more women entrepreneurs here?
Oh, yes.
So
oh,
therefore
yes.
that might give a tendency to say there's more board executives in the women's realm?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think it's really interesting to think of the difference between attitudes to having a go at creating a business. I'm always thrilled, actually, to find that here in America it's much more common to be well regarded because you've tried to do something. Even if you're not successful, the fact that you've tried to do something is regarded as, you know, you've had a go. That's good. You've taken a risk. You've gone for it. Whereas in Europe generally, I think maybe we're a bit more staid, and there's less comfort with people trying something and not being successful. There is a level of stigma, if you like, to that.
Would you say that's because you're an old established country? Does that have anything to do with it, whereas we're a new country, so to speak, and we're gung-ho?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think you have a different attitude, generally. I think we are, well, we show our emotions rather less, I think, than Americans do. Perhaps we're a bit more cynical, and perhaps we're a bit more openly cynical. So I guess that has something to do with it, yeah.
Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that you've had so many wars over there, so people are a little more reserved and afraid to take chances?
Yes, I think, well, when I think about the UK in particular, I mean, we're an island race, and a lot of people don't recognise the impact of being an island race. It's only recently that we've been joined to the rest of Europe with the Channel Tunnel. And,
which is a fabulous tunnel. I've been on it.
Oh, it is. It's great. It's really good. It's very fast. It's a super service. But I think the fact that we're islanders tends to make us want to almost put some barricades up at times, and to retain that sense of, you know, we've been here for a long time and we know how things work in our neck of the woods, and you know, you maybe have a good idea, but it's not quite how we do things.
Do you find you have that same problem with the Europeans, like in France, or Spain, or Germany?
It's interesting. I haven't worked so much in France, although I've been there for holidays quite often. The Germans that I've worked with, and indeed the Swiss, do think rather differently to the English, in that they are much more, the way they're raised actually is much more focused around rules. Around procedures. And someone said to me a little while ago, if you want to persuade a German to do something that they don't really want to do, all you have to do is say, it's in the rule book. Now, I'm not sure that that's absolutely true, because I know some very creative and enterprising Germans, but I think it's interesting as an indication of a different way of approaching things.
Okay, now, if you're dealing in Germany and you have to go back to the rule book, do you find that you respond different to a man in Germany versus a woman?
Oh, yes.
So you have this, should I say, chauvinist attitude with the men, more so?
There is a chauvinist attitude.
Okay.
One of the things that I found really interesting is that you can get away with murder if you're foreign and you're female.
Ah.
It really works to your advantage. The fact that you're foreign to start with means that you don't know the rules, so you don't worry about them. You can bend them, or you can avoid them, or you just completely ignore them because you don't really understand why they're there. The fact that you're female also, particularly in countries where maybe there aren't so many women in senior positions
Mm-hmm.
means that, you know, that's a different kind of foreignness, and the men that you have to deal with don't actually know quite what to do with you. So you really can get away with an awful lot.
Now, do you find this also in the Eastern Bloc countries where they just had the, well, not just the wall fell, but I mean some time ago.
Yeah.
Do you find there's even more of a difference there?
Well, that's really interesting. I did a lot of work in Poland, and I've been in Slovenia and also in the Czech Republic. And they all, of course, have their different flavours of being part of what was the Eastern Bloc. In Poland, I found the level of professionalism between men and women was very similar. The women were very well educated. They certainly were no fools. And the men, I think, respected them in a different way, because there had been a degree of equality simply through their communist beliefs beforehand. What I think is sad now, what's happening more and more, I think, is that some of the services which were always there for women, things like childminding and families living together, albeit in dreadful conditions quite often, that's changing now, and they're beginning to have to cope with the same problems that Western women have had for quite some time. Yeah, that's right.
The daycare situation. So they're
Exactly.
both, basically they're still, not still, but they're more like a two-income family, whereas before they really weren't.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
So now do you find, have you seen, I should ask you, is a difference between an American going into, let's see, Poland versus you going into Poland? Is there a difference in the way they would treat you versus an American?
In Poland, probably yes, because there are an awful lot of very good linkages between Poles who came to America and the Poles that still stay there. So, you know, there's a degree of friendliness and welcome, if you like. But it's a different kind of relationship, because the relationship between Poland and England is much more, it's much more resulting from the last war, where a lot of Poles were fighting alongside the English, well, those that were able to get out of the situation anyway. And I think we're regarded in different light, if you like, as...
a comrade?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
Okay.
They're very welcoming, certainly. They're great.
We're going to take a pause right now, and we'll be back in a moment. Please stay tuned. You are watching The Woman's Connection. Welcome, you're watching The Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie Switzen, and my guest is Lynn Bicker. You're also a joint president of a women's organization in Europe.
Yes, that's right.
And it is EWMD.
That's right.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, I certainly will. EWMD stands for European Women's Management Development, and we're a network of some 1,200 members, actually worldwide, not just European.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's a really good network. We've been going for maybe 12 years now. We were founded by 3 women who went along to a conference on management development and realised that A, there weren't very many women in the audience, and...
That's not good.
Well, no, that's not good. That's not good. And B, there wasn't anyone really worrying about how women were moving through organisations. So they went off to a wine bar, as you do after a conference, and decided to do something about it. And that was, if you like, the seed from which this network has grown. And from 3 to 1,200 in 12 years is pretty good going,
I see, that's fabulous.
Yeah, that's right. But as I say, we're very much thinking about being more international than just European. We already have members in 34 or maybe 35, I can't remember the last count, but that many different countries. And a lot of our membership is doing business in an international way. The profile of our members is quite varied. We have women and men as members, but I have to say we don't have so many men. The profile is really very varied. We have women from all walks of life, generally pretty senior, although there are some younger women coming along. from manufacturing to services, from some academics, researchers, people who are in business for themselves, entrepreneurs, consultants, trainers, a whole range of people.
Sounds like it.
It is. It's really great. And the women are generally people who have made it to a certain extent. They are women of achievement, but very concerned to leave some marks on the trees for the women that come behind them.
That's fabulous.
We offer seminars and workshops and dinner events, and every year we have an international conference. And last year it was in Porto, in Portugal. This year it's going to be in Bodø, in northern Norway. So it's very much about the land of the midnight sun. Yeah, exactly. And the title of the conference, I think, is just fabulous because it really links up with the idea of the midnight sun. It's going to be called Women, Power and Magic.
Lovely. Oh,
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really excellent.
And how many women do you usually have attending these functions?
Well, about 400. So it's
a nice
pretty well
turnout.
done. Yes, that's right. And they're women from all over the world. When we were in Porto, we had women there from Russia, from Africa, from Australia, from the States, and from most of the European countries too. So it's a really international mix.
Would you say a lot of these are entrepreneurial women, or?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think there's a growing section of entrepreneurial women. Maybe because we're of an age, if you like, we're of a level of seniority, where a lot of women have left organisations and begun their own businesses, and are doing that very successfully. But equally, we have a number of women who are in line positions within big companies, big corporates. We have corporate membership as something which we're very keen to promote.
What would you say is the biggest advantage of being a member of your organisation?
Well, I think there are several, but maybe the biggest one is having access to that enormous body of knowledge out there in the world. I mean, one of the things you get as a member is a directory which gives you all the contact information, and also information about people's special interests, projects, publications, whether they offer bed and breakfast if you're visiting their town, which is always
Oh, I
handy.
like that.
Yeah, it's great, it really is. But having access to a source of information which is both professional and high level, but is outside of your own organisation and therefore can be sought in a very safe environment, if you like. You're not exposing yourself within your own company as being someone who doesn't know. You're able to find someone else who can give you that information.
And it's usually a woman who works with you versus the corporation who is saying, hey, wait a minute here.
You're supposed to know this, aren't you?
Exactly. I mean, how could you be in such
Yeah.
an executive position without knowing?
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Yeah. And we also try and do some mentoring for the younger women that are coming along. We have a real commitment to furthering women in their careers. We had a lot of debate, as you might imagine, about our mission statement, but one of the things that stays in there is about accelerating women into powerful positions.
I like that.
I do too. I do too. It's not about encouraging every woman to go off and be president or prime minister or whatever else. It's about, what is their power? How can they absolutely use what's within them for the best effect?
And it's amazing, people don't really realize the power that they've got within themselves.
That's right.
And being a woman, you're always so, oh, you don't know anything. But, you can't do that or something, until you're around other women who are encouraging.
I mean, I find going to our conference and to some of our other events too, I come away feeling really buoyed up. It's like I've had my inspiration fix. It's so powerful to have 300 or so women in the same room.
Now you are in, 35 countries, you said?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so wherever you are in the world, you can almost join or even start an organization.
That's right. I mean, over here in the States, we have a thriving chapter which is in Philadelphia, but we're working very hard to build things up in New York and in other areas in the States. But New York is, in all sorts of ways, where it's at, I think, for the States, and to have a similar active group going here would be absolutely terrific.
Well, let's see what we can do to get one going here.
I hope so. I hope so.
Get our audience to call in, or just say, Barrie, I'm interested in finding out more about the organization and put me into your network. Because
Please
I think
do.
people don't understand the power of networking. And I really get upset when I try to help somebody and I say, well, give so-and-so your card. Oh, what do they know? They're not in my business. But you know, it's amazing how you will come across somebody and say, oh, you're in this business. Oh, I can't help you, but I know somebody who can. And it helps everybody. And there's so many women out there who don't understand the power of networking, and it just is very upsetting to me.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think what's interesting for me is there are networks which are just a network of contacts, and then there are networks which are philosophically bound, if you like, that hold together for a purpose. And one of the principles of EWMD is that first you give and then you take. And it's certainly my view that the more you put into anything, the more you get out of it. So, I just encourage every woman to think about doing some real networking.
Well, part of your networking, I think did you write a book because of your networking?
No, but it certainly helped.
What's your book? Okay,
it's called Private Banking in Europe. And, well, private banking is something for seriously wealthy people. You really have to have an awful lot of liquid funds before you become a client of a private banker.
Oh.
One day I shall be one of those people.
Marvelous.
I hope. But this came out last year, and it's looking at what's happening in the private banking marketplace in Europe. And it's interesting for me looking at what's happening in the US as well, because there's a very different flavour of private banking.
So that's your next book?
It certainly is, yeah. Latin America, I think, and the US.
And is that book available here in the United States?
Yes, it is. It's published by Routledge. It's part of their International Studies in Money and Finance. And it's certainly available over here. You can ask for it in your local bookstore. Please do.
Women investing. Is there a difference?
EWMD members are, what shall I say? They're more inclined to think about what they want to do with their life. And therefore they're more inclined to have a professional interest in finance, in their own finance. But I think women are notoriously bad at looking after themselves.
We're going to take a break right now. Please stay tuned. You are watching The Woman's Connection. Welcome back. My guest today is Lynn Bicker. Lynn, how does your family feel about you being in business and traveling all around?
Well, I think it's varied over the years, really. I think when I went back to college, my husband saw that as a good opportunity of getting some of his tax back, not necessarily, something that was going to be a major career. And certainly as my girls were growing up, I've got two daughters who are now in their mid and late 20s. As they were growing up, I suffered modern woman's guilt, the thing that everyone has when you go out to work and you worry about, are your kids being looked after, or should you be there for them? Should you be ironing their party frocks today instead of being in the office or whatever? And I think there were challenges, let's say, when they were growing up and they really wanted me to be around. But as the years have gone by, I think they've actually been quite proud of me, bless them. And they're very supportive. I'm pleased to say my daughters, because there's not so much difference in our ages, I mean, I have my kids pretty young, so we have a lot in common when we're in conversation, and they talk to me about what I'm doing, and I think they take away some of the learnings that I had to get the hard way.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, how's it affected their business careers?
I think they're quite smart at moving through things. They're very well able to use their initiative.
Would you say because they were going through school at the same time you were going through school and going through business, they have excelled in that way? They're smarter than if it was different, like you were at home?
I'd like to think so, but then, that sets my guilt off in some way. But I do think they had a different experience. I think they, in an innate way, they understood what I was trying to do, and if you like, the frustrations that I had about balancing life and career and making enough time for them. And now I think they certainly understand the benefits of being able to think things through for themselves, being able to make things happen for themselves, that's the big thing. And I don't think, as yet anyway, they haven't come up against any glass ceilings because they're not far enough on in their careers yet. But I like to think that they would deal with them in a totally different way than I would have done maybe 20 years ago if I was in their shoes.
Well, things have changed business-wise. I think
Yes.
more women are accepted today than ever before, but yet we still have the glass ceiling.
Yeah, yeah.
What advice would you give women today going into business? Or just starting out doing a career change, or, you know, they have the empty nest syndrome?
Yes, tough one that. I think be prepared to really think things through, understand what it is you want to get out of something, and then go for it like hell.
If anybody would like more information about EWMD, you can write me, Barrie Switzen, Women's Connection, Ansonia Station, Post Office Box 918, New York, New York, 10023, or you can email me, barrienyc@worldnet.att.net. Look forward to hearing from you, because we can also add you to the Women's Connection directory. And Lynn, I want to thank you so much for joining me. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Barrie. It's been really good to be here.
Thank you. Look forward to hearing from everybody.